Everybody, welcome to Therapist Take. We are on basically episode 2 of what is going to be eventually be on a podcast of Therapist Take. And so we're going to talk today about the fundamentals of self-care. And so don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. We're back. That's how they do on podcasts, right? We're back.
Is it podcast?
Yeah, after commercials and stuff, they're like,
I feel like it's just recorded, and so I don't know that they say we're back.
Oh, well, the ones I listen to,
maybe we're
they
listening to
actually have
podcasts.
sponsors, though. So
That's
they have,
true.
Yeah.
It's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we appreciate people that have tuned in to listen to this. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, this was pre-recorded way in advance because we, at the time of recording this, we are waiting to get a few of these under our belt before we put them on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So you can watch Therapist Take live on YouTube. We record these live with our video cameras and everything. And it's also on our Facebook page, which we will put the links on your screen and in the description of the videos so that you have those. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, the links will also be in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I'm getting the lingo down now.
Yeah, good
There you
job.
go. How are you doing, Carrie?
I'm good.
So we're gonna. I mean, it's the right question to ask, right?
You're right.
We
it
are
is the
talking
perfect question to ask for today.
about right the fundamentals of self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So, which don't you think that therapists sometimes do you ever feel like when you're talking about self-care with clients, you're like I really. I hope they don't know what I'm doing.
They don't know. I don't know how to care for myself.
About, right. You're talking about you need to get better sleep. And you're like, man, last night I was up till 2 a.m.
Well, that one's not mine because, I'm asleep.
Right. Yeah,
right,
of course.
Right.
I can't
that
get a hold
one
of
is
you
not
after
mine.
8:30 at
You
night.
can't talk to me after 8:30. That's
right.
true. Yeah. Do I ever? Yeah, sure. Of course. I think that one of the reasons we're talking about this today is because I think it's something that you and I probably talk about so often we don't even notice it.
Right.
Right. But it's also something that if I really sit back and evaluate, if I'm not talking about it, then I'm doing a disservice as a clinician. It's just too important. It's too basic. Right. Basic doesn't mean simple or easy. Basic means foundational, in my opinion.
Right.
And so, sure, when I'm talking about with clients, it's easy to go, did I really hit that nutrition thing heads
right.
on, or did I not so much? Yeah, it's. I don't know that we're ever completely 100% executing in all those basic self-care areas.
Well, that's also the reason why I think that we have to go revisit the basics. I mean, that's how sports is too, right? I mean,
sure.
Most Major League Baseball players are still hitting off tees. I don't know what it is about us that we kind of, if we don't remind ourselves in practice the fundamentals, we just kind of gravitate away from them.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why it seems to be kind of a natural, maybe it's entropy, kind of a natural move toward chaos. I don't know, but it's good to go back and revisit
maybe it's just
the basics.
maybe it's a question of focus, right? That every now and again you need to go back to focusing on the basics, right? To reiterate that they stay foundational or the base of that pyramid.
Right. Yeah. I agree because I guess, like anything else, if you take something for granted, it gets neglected, and without the right type of nurturance or attention, it doesn't work right anymore.
Right.
And one thing, I mean, I would not say I'm the poster child of self-care, but I think as being a therapist, and two, as I've just kind of, crossed the threshold into my 40s 3 years ago, that I am a lot more focused on it. Like I'm always looking for new things, and I've really kind of gotten into the realizing, I guess, the importance of just small changes. Like I guess kind of like Atomic Habits and like the book Atomic Habits. So one of my favorite podcasts, which I think is also one of yours, is the Huberman Labs.
Oh yes, I enjoy that one.
And I just have taken away so many things just from listening to those podcasts, just the small things. Like I mentioned this last time, it was like flipping the lights on in the morning when you wake up to kind of increase your photon absorbance or whatever, to help you be more energized and stay awake. And I try to do that every morning now.
Yep.
And just things like that are always real helpful. So
Yeah. Well, let's identify what the basics are, and
Yeah.
then we can really talk about, I think, identifying them, and then perhaps maybe setting those maybe awareness building goals or something.
Sure. How about I'm going to take notes while you identify them.
Oh, okay. You're passing the buck. Well,
Yeah.
I think of the basics, and you can find this in a lot of literature. So we're just kind of spitballing it here. But sleep, which we've already mentioned, right? Because
Right.
sleep is when your brain kind of like dumps the garbage and leaves room for the new. And so if you're not getting adequate regular sleep, you just kind of think about the idea that you got all that junk building up, right?
Right.
So sleep, exercise, moving your body, right? Keeping your body strong and active and mobile, right? That's an incredibly important one for your physical health, but for your mental health, it's significant, right? And there's been study after study after study, and even some really good studies around how many minutes per week
Right.
to get mental health benefits, right? So sleep, exercise. The next one is nutrition, right? So making sure that you're actually getting quality ingredients into your life, right? You're actually getting the right fuel that you need for your body. And that doesn't mean this isn't about saying eat a certain way, but eating the way that's best for you, right? Taking in what you need.
Right.
The next one is going to be getting enough sunlight. You mentioned photons, right?
Right.
That's why seasonal affective disorder
Sure.
often is maybe not the only, but is part of the reason why people tend to have mood and energy changes when they're getting less sunlight. And it's about vitamin D, but it's also about just in general the energy, right, that you get from light, especially regular scheduled light.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next one is healthy relationships and healthy interactions, right? So that making sure that you have regular time in environments that are safe and loving, stimulating, fun. That's really important to mental health. And what was the other one that I was going to mention? I know I've forgotten. What's the other one?
I don't know. Like,
It'll probably come to me.
I'm sure it will as we get
Yeah.
to talking about it. But one thing I want to mention to you, going back to kind of what I always call just the big three: sleep, diet, and exercise. Have you heard of that book called Outlive?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the author's name of it. Do you?
Peter Attia.
Yeah, that's it. It's a really fascinating book, and I'll make sure to include that in the resources on the show notes or the description. But he talks about, like, of course, science now has shown that sleep is the main dude right now. The head honcho. And when it comes to self-care, like if you're not getting good sleep, then you can be completely dysregulated.
Sure.
And so it's not saying the others aren't important, but
Right.
without adequate sleep, you're kind of messing everything else up possibly. So, but then there's this, and you can probably reflect on this too, at least how I've experienced our culture over the last 20 years, at least like around, the turn of the century, this really big push for diet, nutrition, all these fad diets coming out, and, it's all about what you eat and processed food, no processed foods,
Right.
and just things like that. You see all the new stores that are popping up and things.
Yep.
And what he talks about on that, he's like, as much as diet is important, so he's definitely not going to say it's not important at all, but he's like, exercise is still king when it comes to those two.
Well, I heard him say that when he started the book, he would have said sleep, nutrition, then exercise. And as he dug in, he flipped.
Right.
Then it was sleep, exercise, then nutrition.
Right.
Yeah.
So movement is so crucial. And as I probably would have said the same thing, to be honest with you. In fact, when I've polled people on my own, just asking them, they always put diet.
Sure.
And I think it's just because it, like just the emphasis is just put on diet in the last 20 years is substantial, so everybody's thinking about, of course, what you put in your body, and it does matter.
Sure.
But, if you're not moving your body, and getting that exercise in, that my guess is that your diet isn't going to be as effective.
Right.
Right. And so, But those the big three, I think if we're going to talk about fundamentals of self-care,
Yep. Yep.
you got to talk about sleep, diet, and exercise. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, see, I did it right there. Did you hear me?
You sure did. You
Sleep,
switched them.
exercise,
There
and
you go.
dieting.
Uh-huh.
So, but again, I think what happens a lot of times is people get fixated on like these are, really huge endeavors,
I know. Right.
right? And I got to tackle them all at once,
Right.
Type thing, especially with diet and exercise. I think with sleep, it's like, okay, I can go to bed a little earlier. I can stay off my phone if I wake up in the middle of the night and so on and so forth, But it's like, oh man, like I gotta change about how I do
Right.
everything related to my diet, and I gotta start going to the gym 5 days a week,
Right.
and I think people just get overwhelmed by that, and then they just don't do any of it.
Yeah, the perfectionist, the overwhelmed. But I also think that the reason we're talking about this today, and we're not health experts, we're not medical doctors, right? We're talking about this because this is about self-care.
Yeah, mental health experts.
Mental health, sure.
Right.
If you can think of sleep and exercise and diet from this is how I take best care of myself, I think that's different than looking at it from I must be fit, I must be a
Yes.
vegetarian, because those can come from a place of criticism or limiting, right, the way that you live. And I think if you think of things from self-care, it's actually an expansive perspective. Like I'd like to live a quality life, right? I'd like to be healthy and not hurt, my body not hurt. I'd like to go to bed and wake up and feel like I can tackle the day. That's different than I better get 8 hours of sleep right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the reason we're talking about it from this framework of what do you notice about when you eat a certain way? What do you notice about when you exercise? What do you notice about how you exercise? And thinking of it from this is a way that I'm taking care of myself.
Right. So, of course, with us being mental health and relationship experts, what the angle that I come at it, which I think is also the angle you're coming at it, is we're looking at what is my relationship with food, what is my relationship with my body, or with my appearance, or what's my relationship with physical activity. And because I think when you take the relational approach to it, you dive into, whatever psychological barriers that may exist that keep you from doing it. So that's one reason why I like the Noom app so much. So like if I kind of wrote off fad diets years ago, and when Noom came around, I was like really skeptical about it, and I started looking into it. And Noom's, they do have some things to do and psychoeducational type things with food, nutrition, and exercise, and really good stuff. But their primary focus is the psychology of the issue. So your relationship with food, or your relationship, your mental hang-ups with comfort eating and so on and so forth. And that I can get behind, because they're not saying that you have to be a certain weight to be valued, to be valuable now. So like you have lost value because you weigh more than the average person does, or because you can't fit in the pair of pants that you wore when you were, in high school or something. And it's really learning to take care of yourself, not so that you can be good enough, but because you already are good enough. So I take care of myself because I like me, not so I can like me.
Right.
And I think and I know like just in my own personal journey, that's hard, because it's like, what if I like me, and I'm just like, then I don't make any changes at all. Right. I'm like, and I was like, well, at least you would like you still, I mean, I guess that's possible, but I think that you're just more apt to do the work to take care of yourself when you like the person that's looking back at you in the mirror.
Well, I always tell clients, because I think this is true, that being harsh and critical about yourself will start you somewhere, but it won't keep you there. So you may think, I've got to get better sleep, so I'm going to have to put my phone down and blah, blah, blah. But if it's from a critical, angry, you lazy, your brain is fried, you got to sleep, it may start it. But to stay someone who takes good care of themselves via sleep, exercise and nutrition, it probably needs to come from a place of, I love me, I like me, I want to take the best care of me that I can, right? So I'm going to go to bed at a reasonable time tonight because I want to take good care of myself,
Yeah.
rather than because I better. If not, I'll be so mad at myself.
Right. Yes, of course. Yeah. And then, or I like the way I feel when I don't eat cereal right before I go to bed or something, which is not my issue, by the way.
No, never.
Of course, I'm not going to mention my stuff on here.
Never.
But no, it's for real. Like, they're definitely, I've realized as I pay more attention to my body, as I think as you do when you get older, because your body doesn't, you can't just let it go,
It screams
free.
at you more.
Right. Yeah. You got to kind of pay attention to what it's saying. And, they're definitely, like, once I'm able to make those connections of, like, I just, that I'm sure that tastes wonderful, but man, if I eat it, I know how I'm going to feel.
I'll feel crummy.
And so I think that's an effort. It's not like, crap, I just ate 500 more calories and I'm now beating myself up.
I blew it. Yeah.
Right.
So how does this relate to, let's take it into the work that we do. What makes this important for us to be talking about when we're mostly working with people that are dealing with pretty hard stuff, right? Betrayal trauma, relationships falling apart, infidelity,
right.
depression, anxiety, those adjustment issues. What makes this important?
Well, I think that people come in, those types of events can just immediately create dysregulation in your body. And so, that type of trauma you could be the most regulated person on the planet and go through something like that. And then you have your body's immediately gone into fight or flight mode, and and you're completely dysregulated. And so, for us and working with people going through that, like, we have to go back, in my opinion, we have to go back to the basics and teach them grounding techniques and talk about some of these fundamental things, just in an effort to get them somewhat regulated, right? Because it's not going to happen overnight, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think too that you have to remember that trauma happens to the whole mind, body, spirit, right? And so, we need to slow down and take care of all those, parts or whatever you want to say that about yourself. And that means you got to rest your body, right? You got to try to rest your body, right? You've got to move your body when it's time, and you've got to fuel your body. So I think those are really important. And, when our clients come in and they've, just been devastated by something, and you say, I need you to focus on sleep. I need you to try to, eat something today. I like for you to get, and what do you, that can sound like you're distracting them, but it's not. Because if you're going to actually process the trauma that's happened to you, your brain and body need to be online, and they need to be humming together, right? They need to be communicating. And in order to do that, we've got to address that from a basic fundamental position, right? And so, it's like a lot of things, like maybe your mom or someone wise always said to you, like, oh no, calm down before you make a decision. Right. And so this is kind of what we're reiterating. Let's get ourselves a little bit more online before we start trying to, process ourselves through this journey of healing after a traumatic event or experience.
Yeah. I think too, like, for people who are going through this, like, they have this conundrum that's happening because is it parasympathetic, right? It's fight or flight. Am I getting that? Or is it
is the get up and go.
The sympathetic. Yeah.
The sympathetic, and the para is the rest and digest.
Right. Yeah, okay. So I get them all mixed up, like in the autonomic and things like that.
Sure.
But when you're entering into that fight or flight stage, like, always talk about this as, this is the part of your brain that doesn't have eyes. Like, it can't see contextually that you're okay. It feels like you're in danger, and so it does what it's supposed to do. But then you have the part of you that does have eyes that sees that you're not in danger, and yet you're feeling this way. And there's this conflict that's happening with that part of your brain that can see and the part of your brain that feels, right? And that survivor versus basically the neocortex versus the limbic brain, right? And so I think that's what creates the distress with people, is that then they start asking the question, why am I feeling this? Why is this happening to me? Like, why am I feeling this way? Or sometimes even like a year in, they're still like, why am I still feeling this way? Because there's that part that's operating based upon, stimuli, and that part they can't see is like it feels enough like something else you've experienced for it to go into that fight or flight response, and so part of, I think, the work in like helping people starting to get regulated is to let them know that this is normal, like in helping them learn to be grateful for the part of their body that cares enough about them to keep them safe, but that, it's kind of start chipping away at letting that part of their brain know that it's that they're okay, But when I think what happens, they start to resist it. Like they're mad that they're mad. They're sad that they're sad.
Yeah.
And I think that creates even more dysregulation.
Sure.
And so I think kind of one of the first steps is helping them to accept, like, you're supposed to be upset.
Right.
You're supposed to be sad in situations like this. Your brain knows very much what it's doing. And so sometimes it's learning to not push back so hard against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's easier to do when you've regulated your central nervous system through those basics, right? Which is, again, why it's so important. And I think it can sound either simplistic or just even can sound the other extreme, ridiculous. But okay, what would happen if we give this some time and you get yourself in, get some good rest, right? If you feed yourself, if you, try to move your body a little bit. And then we'll talk about what's going on with you emotionally, psychologically, and relationally.
Yeah. And when you're going through stuff like that, I can remember when I was going through some stuff years ago, and I would get out and go for a run. Like, I was blown away at how emotional I would get and have no clue, like, where is this coming from?
Sure.
Like, I've never finished a run and then wanted to start crying, but that's like when you're working to regulate your body, like, your body is going to want to release the stress that it's holding on to, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what one of the main points of crying is, so your body can release that stress.
Yeah.
So
how do we break this down? One of the things you mentioned was this doesn't have to become a narrow box, right? You don't have to eat 4 things or sleep in a specific way, but how do we help people say, I'd like to get better at those basics? What would you say?
Well, that's a good question. Do you think that people are... See, I'm doing the therapist thing. I'm going to answer a question with a question.
That's annoying.
Do you think that that's what we're helping people, like, wanting to get better at it, or that they're already wanting to get better at it, but there's something else that is kind of, like, there's some kind of roadblock that's because one thing I always say is, like, you can really want something and still not do it. And then, of course, it's really annoying when people say, well, if you really wanted it, then you would do it. And I just don't think that's true. I think that there's a lot of people that really want to make certain changes in their life and there is some kind of mental or emotional block there. So
both, of course. I'll give you the annoying therapist answer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you know how to give it back.
Sure.
For me, I think is learning to be kind to yourself with the struggle. Like, like, I think all of us to some degree have a fear of failure. I think that's more of the human condition than anything else, that, to struggle with something, especially when it's related to our own bodies, our own existence. We don't like that. And then we can be really hard on ourselves. And that was actually one of the things I put in the description, is that, when we talk about, like, we see kids on sports teams and we're like, man, that kid's really hard on himself. And I'm like, who isn't? Like, I think everybody is hard on themselves.
Yeah.
Like, and probably I would venture to say that most people are too hard on themselves. And I think that's probably for me, that's probably one of the first things I would tackle is let's work at being kind to yourself.
Sure. I think kind to yourself. And I think even just if you're talking about people that are trying to refocus on those, or people who are struggling because of an experience, that I think we add the word enough in there. Like, just do enough. Just
Right.
do your best. Just, like
Mm-hmm.
in digging into the sleep research, like, yeah, sure, it'd be
Mm-hmm.
great if we all slept 7 to 8 hours a day straight and
Mm-hmm.
didn't wake up. But,
Yeah.
6 is better than 5. And
Yeah.
waking up 3 times rather than 4 is better.
Mhm.
And laying there, and if you're not sleeping, but you're laying and you're at least feeling comfortable,
Right.
that's better than nothing, right? And so giving
Yeah.
yourself that compassion, and I'm doing the best that I can. It has to be, better than it could. Perhaps for today, I can call that good enough.
Yeah. So don't you think that word enough is a super powerful word?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like I'm, picturing, and of course I've said that to clients too, and that, this drive to be enough, so when your therapist is sitting across from you saying, why can't that just be enough?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just strive for good enough, which is really what they're going for anyways, but it's not. The implication there is good enough from your standard, good enough for you, instead of good enough for this person or good enough for that person.
Right.
And
Some other
and so
standard.
maybe sometimes for the first time, this idea is being presented vocally, that why not just go good enough for you right now,
Mm-hmm.
which might be something a lot of people probably haven't ever
Giving themselves
really considered.
permission. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. And that helps you know what your basic is. When you say
Yeah.
it's good enough for me.
Yeah. It's just also hard to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Again, maybe why we're talking about this today. Circle back to every
Right.
now and again checking on this stuff.
But I do think that I don't think you and I, being, relational therapists, that we would say that you just say the heck with everybody else
Right.
and what in their opinions of your thoughts and how your actions or behaviors affect them. But I do think, like, if you want somebody else to be convinced you're good enough, you got to be convinced first. Like, it's
Yeah.
a really hard sell to do it the other way. And it's also really asking a lot, because you're basically saying, would you love me more than I love me?
Yeah.
Another person probably is like, yeah, but man, it's going to get tedious eventually.
Yeah.
I hope that you would learn to love yourself. I mean, we can
Sure.
all think about people in our lives that have had a hard time with that, and you're just like, man, if you could just see you how I see you, right? And it's because you not loving yourself is really kind of taxing on me.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's the journey we're on always.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't end.
I agree. I have a question for you, though.
Achievable. Mm-hmm.
A question that you don't know I'm going to ask.
Oh, good.
All right.
Wonderful.
She loves these. What is a self-care effort, activity, whatever, that it would be good for you to do, and you just won't do it?
And every year, what my New Year's resolution is?
What?
I'm going to meditate on the regular.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's even. I'm not doing that either. Just-
Mindfulness, whatever,
Mindfulness,
right?
yeah.
Like I think I can I am more mindful, but I don't regularly.
Yeah.
Every year, that's my New Year's resolution.
yeah,
And guess what? Every year I'm like, well, when am I going to really fit that in?
Yeah.
I know it's great.
That's
It's
tough
one
to
of the
do.
basics, right? I know it would
Yeah.
be helpful. I'm better at moving than
Yeah.
I am at resting. I need to work.
Right.
Of course, whatever you're better at, you need to work on the other side. But
Yeah.
I don't do it.
yeah. I
about
really
you?
do. Like, I've had some clients that are really, really good meditators, and I really do envy it. Like, that it is impressive. People that can etch out that time, and yeah.
All right, well, admit yours before we.
Well,
wrap up.
mine's along the same lines. Mine's yoga.
Oh.
And I know, like, I hurt my back a couple years ago, and I did yoga for like 2 weeks, and it was like that's the closest thing to ibuprofen without taking ibuprofen. I mean, I was blown away on how good my back felt those 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm going to keep doing this. And of course I did. I'm going to get back to doing this. And I'm like, but it's kind of like, it's like, there's something about being still where I'm like, well, I could go for a run
Right.
or
Lift some
something, and like
weights. Yeah.
my brain just hasn't clicked. Well, my wife is different. She does yoga every single day, and her brain has made the connection of the benefits
Yeah.
in it, but I just haven't got there yet. So
Yeah.
it's still on my radar.
Yeah. It can be our New Year's
Yeah.
resolutions again, right?
Yeah, of course. But you only put the things on your New Year's resolutions that you know are going to fall through, right? Otherwise, you don't put them on there. You just do them. So if I really want to do it, I probably shouldn't put it on my New Year's
Yeah, you
resolution.
shouldn't do it, right? Maybe next year, year after.
Right.
Keep kicking that can. Yeah.
It's like,
All right. Well, we're going to go take good care of ourselves for the rest of the day now.
well, I hope so.
Okay.
I got a bunch of paperwork to do.
You plan
and
to? Mm-hmm.
a whole schedule to get done.
Okay. And then you're going to go to bed at a reasonable hour
After I do
after
yoga.
no blue light for an hour and all that good stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate everybody that tunes in, listens to this, hopes that the information is helpful,
Yeah.
as always. And the different resources and things that we mentioned, we'll make sure to, whether it's books or podcasts and things like that, we'll put in the show notes or the description. Was there any other resources you wanted to mention? So we mentioned the Huberman Labs, the Outlive book.
Sure. You mentioned Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah,
book.
I think The Power of Habits, another good.
Power Habits, really
good
excellent book.
Yeah.
What about are there any? We used to recommend Health Journeys. I don't know if they're still.
I don't know if they
exist.
still do guided imagery, but I just even looking up guided imageries because most Americans, we can't just meditate. We need guidance. We need
I'm a big fan of Headspace app.
Sure.
I still use that when I get on planes sometimes. So
Yeah.
the
Calm.
Headspace or Calm app, but any type of guided imagery.
YouTube has lots and lots available. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when it comes to yoga and stuff, my wife does it all on YouTube. So.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There we go. We fixed it all.
Yep. All right. We'll see you back next time.
Thank you.